So, my name is Lisa Romano, and I am a life coach that specializes in emotional recovery. Primarily, I work with adult children of alcoholics, but recently I've noticed that a lot of my clients are coming to me because they have gotten some idea that they're codependent. They don't necessarily understand exactly what that means, and they're looking for answers, and that's where I come in. So, what I want to do is explain why and how codependency is not always related to alcoholism. If you're codependent, chances are you were raised in a home that was non assertive and lacked clear communication. Communication styles were not direct, they were, in fact, indirect. They were passive aggressive, they were sarcastic. People didn't always tell the truth. Most often, people didn't tell the truth. It was non communicative, a lot of innuendos, perhaps, a lot of suggestion, but very non direct. So, in other words, for instance, if you were a small child and you came home and you asked mommy a question and she would answer it with another question, perhaps she might say something like, "What are you asking me that for? Go ask your father." Very non direct. "Why are you asking such a stupid question? Go sit down." "Don't bother me. Go sit down." "I don't know. Do you think I have all the answers? Go sit down." Very non-direct. Your questions never really got answered. And so what happened as you grew up, you sort of got the sense that asking questions was wrong. Having questions be answered was probably not going to happen. And so there's a lot of confusion in your home. That's just one very simple example of how and why someone might grow up a little bit confused and then end up becoming codependent. When you're codependent, you're generally very confused about who you are and your sense of self and where your worth comes from. Non codependent children have grown up in homes where parents psychologically see them. The child feels seen psychologically, the child feels worthy psychologically. And most of us, let's face it, didn't have parents that were that aware to know that they were supposed to encourage their children to be individuals, to be expansive thinkers, and that even it was even okay to challenge their parents. We weren't taught, most of us weren't taught that. Most of us were raised in homes where children were seen and not heard, or children were, in spite of all this hoopla that children have rights, most of us didn't feel like we did. Well, it was all nonsense, and we knew it was nonsense. And we grew up understanding that the world was not as fair as it could have or should have been. But unfortunately, we've taken that in upon self. And because we weren't taught that we were worthy by our parents in a psychological way, unfortunately, that has stained us. And so we go out into the world feeling unworthy. That was our parents' job, to make us feel worthy. It didn't matter if we had 2 heads, 3 heads, if we had purple skin and 10 eyeballs and 12 limbs. It should not have mattered. In an ideal world, our parents would have known to make us feel worthy, not because we got A's in school, and not because we were thin, and not because we were prettier than the girl next door, or not because we said yes when we meant no, and not because we always smiled even though everybody else was grumpy. Not because of those things. We were worthy just because we were us, because we came into this world worthy beings. So if you grew up in a home where that was not instilled in you, then more than likely you're facing this world from a standpoint that has you feeling inferior and insecure, and that's not your fault. But this world, this universe is indifferent. I'll say that again. This universe is indifferent. It does not matter whether or not you see yourself as a victim, whether or not you see yourself as powerless. It doesn't matter. The world works like a boomerang. What you are is what gets reflected back to you. So if you feel insecure, you are going to attract situations and people into your life that are going to make you feel even more insecure. They're going to reinforce that sense of insecurity. Why? Because your emotional set point that you learned as a child has you believing that you're not worthy of really good life experiences. So even if a wonderful man or a wonderful woman comes along, you'll avoid them, or you'll feel unworthy of them unconsciously and push them away or not even try. And so again, that's where that boomerang effect comes back. We become what we know. And so if you in order to heal this, I mean, you can crack the codependency code. I'm a firm believer in it. I have done it. I came from a very codependent family, long history of alcoholism. Not my parents. I grew up in a dry home, which was very difficult because I had nothing to point at. My parents, however, grew up in homes where both their parents were alcoholics. Well, my father's mother committed suicide. His father was a severe alcoholic. And on my mom's side, both mom and dad, both of my grandparents were alcoholics. So, but my parents, as dysfunctional as their home was, at least they had something to point at, like, that's a problem. And so when they grew up, they decided just not to drink, and they thought all their problems were going to be solved. And no, they were raised by alcoholics, and unfortunately, they very much think like alcoholics. They're unaware that they think like alcoholics in terms of the way they process information, the way they view the world. They're unaware of that because they haven't done their life work, but we have to give them a break because there was no Dr. Phil and there was no Oprah back in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. So, self-help has really blossomed after 1970 and the 80s and the 90s and up to current times. Now it's everywhere. It's a part of our society. Thank God, thank God. But that being said, people who are raised by alcoholics who don't do their history work, don't do their recovery work, unfortunately think like alcoholics. They are unable to have fun. They guess at what normal is. They try very hard to control their emotions. They don't know how to master their emotions. So the slightest thing might bump them off. Control is a big, big issue. Very, very sensitive, very, very hypersensitive to criticism. They cannot laugh at themselves. They are very rigid in their thinking. They very often have other types of addictions, whether it be money or cleaning or shopping or gossip or plastic surgery or the way they look or their weight or they're bulimic, they're anorexic. Have a lot of those types of distraction type addictions. Very much avoid dealing with self. And when confronted with an aspect of their personality that perhaps a child doesn't like, so for instance, if you are the grandchild of an alcoholic and you present to your mom and say, I don't like when you make fun of me in front of other people, the adult child of an alcoholic who has not done recovery work is going to get very, very angry that you dared insinuate that she did not do her job or that she did something wrong, because in her mind she's not drinking, she's not an alcoholic like her mother or her father. So in her head she's doing everything she's supposed to be doing and life should be peachy keen. Very, very small perception of what the world is and how it's supposed to work. Very, very unaware of self. Very pigeonholed. And it's very sad because adult children of alcoholics who have not done their recovery work don't even know that there's life beyond enabling and denial and codependent thinking and distractions and worrying about what everybody else thinks about them and trying to control their emotions. And, being human means exploring all your emotions. Not toning yourself down. Of course, there are social norms and things that we have to obviously adhere to for very good reasons. But in everyday life, I mean, if you're home and you're watching a movie and you feel like crying, cry. You're supposed to cry. That was the whole purpose of the movie, perhaps, is to elicit some type of empathy from the viewer. But adult children of alcoholics don't let go. They have a very hard time letting go. They're so afraid they're going to get consumed by their emotions. Your emotions won't kill you. Actually, repressing your emotions will create a lot of dis-ease in the body and inflammation in the body and disrupt energy in the body and create depression and anxiety. And then we go to the doctors for depression, and we go to psychiatrists because we have anxiety. And it's this big negative loop, and it all comes back to loving self. And one of the things that I say is, and it's on my books and it's on my website, and I use it a lot when I coach my clients on one-on-one. I say all love starts with self-love. And when you're born in a home and you're born to two parents who don't see you, life gets very, very messy. And you set out looking for that love that was supposed to be given to you by your parents. You go out seeking it, and you never stop seeking it. And it's it's an abyss, basically, because that type of love, you cannot, if it wasn't given to you when you were a child, when you needed it, it's something that you need to stop and look within for. And the great news is that it is within you. It's in you. You came from Creator. We all come from the same place. We're like bananas. Peel our skin off, and we're all the same inside. We're 99.9 the same inside, which I think is pretty amazing. So whoever and whatever created me created you, and created the trees, created the sun, created the stars, created the galaxies, created all that is. So in reality, you are love. You came from love. And I know it's frightening, but until you stop looking for love outside of self and you start facing your codependent issues, meaning you start understanding that there's something wrong with seeking your happiness outside of yourself. Because if you do that, if you put your happiness outside of yourself, whether it's in a car or in a home or in a relationship, a home can be just destroyed. A home can be taken away from you. A car can be stolen. A relationship with the person that you're in love with that you think is supposed to bring you happiness can die, can move away, can decide they don't want you anymore. Oh well, So we don't ever want to teach our children, as parents today, we don't want to teach our children to ever put their happiness outside of self. Not even to put their happiness in us, because one day we will die. So it's really important moving forward as parents who are much more aware, hopefully much more aware, that we teach our children to love self, to seek happiness from within, not try to keep up with the skinny girl down the block or the funny guy down the road. We want our children to be individuals. If they're gay, be gay. If they want to have purple hair, what's the big deal? It's a fad. Who cares what the neighbors think? They're our children. We have to honor and love them through whatever phase they're going through. That's our job as parents. That was not done with us, we adult children of alcoholics, we codependents. We were not taught that we were enough. We were taught to repress ourselves, to be ashamed of ourselves, to worry what other people think about us, to worry about what the teachers thought about us, to worry about what Aunt Mary thought about us and what Uncle Joe thought about us, to worry about what Grandma, and you get the picture. It's just not necessary. You were supposed to be taught that you were enough. And chances are you weren't. Especially if you're listening to this video, chances are you weren't. And I'm here to tell you that you are enough, as I am enough, and we always were enough. And we're on a journey. And your journey will lead you right back to where my journey left me, which is right at the door of all my fears. And once I face them, and once I learned to accept my fears and to work them through intellectually and understand why I was codependent and why I was so fear and shame-based and guilt-based and why, all these dynamics were showing up in me, because I had two adult children of alcoholics who were very codependent and enabled one another and were very controlling and very fear-based and were sarcastic and passive-aggressive and yada, 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 yada. I grew up in a very controlling home. So once I understood why I was the way I was and why I worried about what everyone else thought about me and why I had so much anxiety and developed panic disorders and you name it, asthma, and once I figured it all out, I learned to heal and I learned to work that through. And it now led me down this path where I do this for a living. I mean, who's got it better than me? I help people heal. I'm certified Reiki teacher. I am a certified nutritionist. I am a personal trainer, fitness trainer. I do energy healing. I'm a life coach. I'm a best-selling author. I'm a keynote speaker. I really don't think anybody's got it better than me. But I want you to have it as good as I do. But I'm telling you, the only way to get to where you want to go is by looking within. And I, as well as many other teachers out there in this world, offer our services up to you, the client, the soul who is in search of mastering self. So I encourage you to look at my website. It's www.healingselfesteem.com. I also encourage you to mull over my other YouTube videos. In addition, I am the author of the book, The Road Back to Me, also My Road Beyond the Codependent Divorce, and Loving the Self Affirmations, Breaking the Unconscious Codependent Belief Systems. And Through this type of work and these types of videos, you shall heal. It is my promise to you. And also, if you're interested in a life coaching session, you can reach me through my website. There's a contact form that I'd love for you to check out. Thank you so much, and namaste.